Dragon's Down is a 1 to 4 player or 1 to 6 player game with a base first expansion of adventure and exploration and combat set in a fantasy realm. This game scores a very good solid A-. Want to find out why? Well, come on back after the break. Hey everybody, welcome off the shelf game reviews. This is a YouTube channel dedicated to the wonderful tabletop gaming hobby, and this video is a review of the game of Dragon's Down. Now, Dragon's Down is a game for 1 to 6 players. Basic box is only for 1 to 4 players, but this game just came out on Kickstarter, so pretty much everybody who has the game most likely has the first expansion of Desolation, which makes it a 1 to 6 player game. And this game is a classic adventure game, very similar to games such as Mage Knight and Runebound, except this is better because this one emulates the classic granddaddy of them all, the game of Magic Realm. Magic Realm was the very first game to start the adventure-style games in the late 70s, early 80s, because the basic idea is you just take one hero, and you venture across the lands, you explore, you encounter, you fight, you do various different things, and it's not like a lot of modern board games. You see a lot of modern board games, I'll use the games such as Descent as a really good example. They kind of spoon feed you a story. And when we talk about Descent, especially the most recent version, Descent, it definitely spoon feeds you a story. Games like Dragon's Down and Mage Knight and those kind of games don't do that, though. These are games where you are creating your own story because you are playing an adventure game where you're going to play one hero or maybe a couple different heroes depending on the style of game you're playing. Because again, this is a fairly robust genre of games where these style of games do exist. But the basic idea is you're going to create a hero, you're going to explore, you're going to encounter, but all this stuff is going to be random. And this is going to be random in a good way. It's going to be random because you're exploring a world. You're not having a story shoved down your throat. You're creating the story because you're going out there exploring. Whether your story is going out there to travel through the lands, whether your story is going out there to become the best wizard, the story is going out there to fight the bad guys, or your story is just to become a grand quest completer or something like that. That is the basic idea of the game. That's something I need to impress upon you with the game of Dragon's Down. This is a game where you want to create a story, not have a story spoon-fed to you. Now, I'm not saying having a story spoon-fed to you is a bad thing. Just want to make sure you understand that there is no story here beyond the story you create yourself. Now, this game pretty much emulates the classic game of what it's supposed to be. I mean, this is Magic Realm reimagined for the modern ages. So a lot of the things here are going to feel a little bit old school, and that can be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on what kind of style of gameplay you like. There is some randomness in the game. You have the randomness of the dice, and yes, I've said it multiple times already, these dice definitely hate you. They are trying to make you suffer horrible, horrible fates. You also have the randomness of how the tiles are going to come out. Maybe you may get random items early in the game. Maybe you may find a forgotten city early in the game, or maybe you just may have the dice not like you, and you'll end up finding lots of powerful monsters that will continually beat you down, and you're going to have a struggle. So this is truly a game of exploration where it's a game of controlling the randomness, making the randomness work in your favor, knowing when to push your luck, when not to push your luck, and knowing when to go out there and change your tactics. If, for example, you play a caster class who doesn't have a lot of hit points and you don't have a lot of armor and a lot of protection, but you have your spells, maybe you need to play a little differently in the beginning of the game and avoid going out there and fighting all these monsters. Alternately, if you're going to play a character who is really melee focused, who can go out there and start smashing things early in the game, maybe you're going to play a different game where you can go out there and try to incite the monsters to come out. Now, during the playthrough, I never covered this because it wasn't working for my hero, but there is actually the ability where you can go ahead and make extra noise, which means you're going to roll the summoning dice twice. And you may get a lot of enemies, which can be a little detrimental to you, especially if you're not built for it. But that is what is so interesting about the game. You create the story, you develop the story, and this is the story you're building that you want to play through. Again, going through the gameplay of this exploration of this game that has lots of variety, lots of replay potential, and lots of challenges, and yeah, it does occasionally have lots of luck. Sometimes that luck is going to kick you in the teeth, so you need to learn how to respond to that luck. Otherwise, you're going to have times where you're going, well, that was kind of brutal, but again, that adds to the fun of the game. Now, there's not a lot of new things that this game brings out when you're talking about the adventure games. Again, it is really going back to the hallmark of the classic game of Magic Realm, and for me, that's a good thing. Now, I personally never ever played the classic game Magic Realm. I always wanted to. Matter of fact, I subscribed to Magic Realm over on Board Game Geek years and years ago because I was always fascinated by it because it seemed like a great game, but it's a little bit before my time. But I was always interested in it, but I never was interested enough to go out there and do the print and play, do all the work to put the game together, so I just never did it. But I always follow along because it seemed like a fun, entertaining game that would be my style of game. So when the game of Dragons Down was announced, and they announced it was a spiritual re-implementation of classic game Magic Realm, I was on board almost immediately, especially when I found out the name or who the designer was Scott. Now, I'm not going to say his last name because I don't know if it's Scott DeMers or Demers, and we all know how wonderful I am at butchering people's names. If you don't believe me, go check out my Firefly video where I can't pronounce one name, and yeah, you'll make fun of me, and yeah, I definitely do deserve it. But definitely, what interested me about this game was the re-implementation and the designer. Now, this is the designer whose games I appreciate quite a bit. I think Hellenic, I've said it before and I'll say it again, is an absolutely fantastic game. And again, if you don't believe me, you're just wrong. You can be wrong in life. It is totally allowed to be. But I enjoy the games he designs because he designed games in a way that I like them. So he puts them together very, very well. And I think that he did a great job with this game. But I do need to let you know that this game does have some things that you definitely need to be really paying attention to, because not all adventure games feel the same. Some adventure games are a very strong narrative. Some adventure games are not a strong narrative. It's a narrative that you want to build. Some adventure games are very mathematical, such as Mage Knight. Some adventure games are very random, such as Runebound, where you're kind of facing the way things are coming out. That adds to the variety in the gameplay. So this game definitely does feel like it's a little more towards the luck center of things, but it really isn't, because this is a game of luck mitigation, not luck abuse. Now, there can be a big difference in that if you play games such as games from Mantic or games from Games Workshop, where you truly are chucking tons of dice every single round and you're laying yourself before the whims of the dice. This game isn't like this, but this is definitely a game where the dice can definitely do things. The way things can come out can definitely do things. So the game can feel that it can be a little bit luck-based. I will tell you, though, that the game does show its skill eventually, but the first couple times you play the game, you're probably going to get trounced. Because you need to understand that you need to understand how you built your character, how the different realms are being built up based on different land types you're building, how the dice are influencing you, and how the enemies are coming out, and just how you're exploring is going to make a huge difference on the game. A lot of the skill of this game comes in understanding your hero before you even set up the game board. So a lot of times when you lay out the game board and you figure out which kind of land types you're going to play with, you put out your land types and 2 or 3 land types based on however you want to play. Then you're going to pick your hero based on looking at the land types. For example, if I was going to play a very strong mountain and caves land type, I probably want to play a hero who isn't going to be hampered by that too much. So I probably want to pick a half-orc or a dwarf, because you don't want to be double hampered too much by that if I pick like maybe a half-elf who wants to go into the cities and maybe a half-elf and druid. Now, it's possible, but it definitely adds to the challenge of the game. And that's where a lot of the challenge comes from this game, is understanding the combinations of these heroes and understanding the combinations of land types. Now, I highly suggest when you're first learning to play the game, kind of pick your hero based on the land types that you're putting out there. And of course, every time you play this game, you definitely want to include the Malevolent Mountains and the caves, because they bring out the Forgotten City and the Dwarven Ruins, which are really nice. They kind of add the variety of the game. So no matter how many land types you're playing with the game, make sure you always include one of those. It's a really good idea. Now, you don't have to. And again, as you start playing the game and evolving your playstyle, you can definitely change how you're playing it very, very much. And it does add to the variety and the replay and the potential of the game, which is something I definitely really do appreciate about the game. Just need to say, though, that luck and skill is definitely a strong theme with this game. But again, your skill will eventually trump the amount of luck in this game, even though at first glance, this is a game that does appear to really hit you with the luck, whether it's the way the land comes out, whether it's the way the treasures and the cards come out, whether it's the way the dice treat you. Again, it feels a little lucky in the beginning, but your skill will truly trump the game and help you become a better player, and you'll get better and better at the game. I imagine your first couple of games, if you just do the standard scenario, you might struggle at getting to 20 legend points. But after you play the game, your new challenge is getting to 25 legend points, getting to 30 legend points, playing the special missions, because this game does come with multiple different missions that add to the variety of the game. And every one of these scenarios is going to play different and add variety of the game. Whether you have the one that's the Eye Demon, which is actually the one I want to play again and hopefully, win this time. There's multiple other ones that give you different ways to play the game. And what I do appreciate about this game quite a bit is that it does allow you to player versus player It also allows you to play fully cooperative, which is really cool and really interesting. And that's through the bandit tokens and the ability for the players to go after each other. Now, I highly suggest the first couple times you play the game, don't play with the PvP at all because, again, part of that luck mitigation, that skill, you're going to see that a skilled player who has a good class, who has a good understanding of how the board is, they're going to hunt down the players who don't have the skill or the ability to figure out the board or the class, and they're going to have an easier time taking out those players. So definitely get all your players on board at approximately the same skill level before you play the PvP rules, but they can be very good. And I actually think the Outlaw Adventure is actually really, really cool. It creates a different way the game plays, and I actually kind of like the idea has become the redeemed outlaw, or maybe not, but that's kind of a cool thing about the game. Now, one of the things that I do want to cover in this game is going to be the components, because now we're going to get to the first real hiccup I kind of have with this game. There's a couple of things that I feel could have been better with this game, and it's pretty much the vast majority of my only complaints about this game come from the components. You know, when you watch a classic, great Hollywood movie and you're watching it, the special effects are amazing and all the things are just exploding all over the place, and then suddenly you see where the budget ended? That's kind of how I feel a little with Magic Realm. And I'm going to be brutal and I'm going to be blunt here, and some people's feelings are going to be hurt here. That's kind of all of our faults. Yeah, our faults. Because all of us are so high on the Kickstarter love train where we will only back games that have tons and mountains of plastic. If there's not tons and mountains of plastic, we don't throw millions and millions of dollars at games. We are all the fools for doing that, and we are all the fools for supporting almost said a bad word there, not as good, lackluster plastic games when good games that are great designs kind of fall by the wayside. So again, when I'm complaining about this, I do realize that this is partially my fault. This is also partially your fault. Well, maybe not partially my fault because I backed all in on this game. And I guess this is a good time to say that I was 100% a backer of this game. This review is not from somebody who got a free copy of this game. I paid for it. I paid for the shipping, and everything is here because that's how I run my channel. I am not one of those persons who does this for free games or anything like that. I truly 100% just try to help you learn and experience great games that you can enjoy, because I know how hard all of you work for your money. But back to the components here. This game has a couple different things that kind of made me feel that if they only had just a little bit more money, some of those things can be countered. The first thing I'll talk about is the color of these cubes. These cubes did not feel like they matched the color very, very well. And it becomes very, very apparent when you look at some of the cards. And it's actually interesting. The color on the Desolation cards matches the cubes better on the color on the basic cards for the game. So I know there was something that either happened at the factory or there's some kind of budgetary concerns or something like that. Additionally, I feel like the rulebook could have used one more pass through. A little bit of organization could have been better, and it could have used some more examples. I truly feel that this rulebook kind of makes the assumption that you played Magic Realm before, so some of the things should make more sense to you. And it's kind of interesting when you go to Board Game Geek, you see that a lot of people have answers to some questions, but those are people who played Magic Realm before, so they kind of understand what the idea of the game is, what they're trying to press upon you with the various different things. I'll take a very, very good example here that some of you will be understanding right when you first play the game. In the classic game of Magic Realm, the game is played in a day cycle and a night cycle, much like Mage Knight. This game is played out over turns. Well, in my mind, when I play the game, each turn is a day, but each turn or each day is basically you do your actions, then monsters are going to spawn, then you go to hide, and then you're going to go into combat. You always go into combat. It doesn't really explain why that happens. And it's kind of jarring from a gameplay standpoint because you're kind of understanding, why am I doing combat every round, especially if there's no monsters on the board? Aha, because that's the only way to cast spells. Spells can only be cast during combat. So it feels jarring because you're like, that doesn't make any sense at all until you understand this action evolution of the classic game of Magic Realm, where it was a day and a night cycle. You did all your actions during the day, then at night you camped out, and at night, if you weren't fighting monsters, nighttime is when you casted all your spells in preparation for the next day. So thematically it makes sense, but it's not really explaining the rulebook. So you spend your rulebook time going, how do I do this travel spell right here? Because I can only cast spells during combat, but this isn't a combat spell. So what am I doing? But there's no monsters on my tail, so I'm not in combat. So it kind of does a few things like that I think could have been a little bit better explanation. And it's actually what incentivized me to film this video series for this game, because I think this is a really great game and I want more people to enjoy it. But I also feel that some people are going to get a little bit of a hiccup when they experience that and not understand how things work. Additionally, there's a couple different errors I've experienced in the rulebook. There's a couple errors on some of the cards, and I'm not even sure it was an error or not. Like, for example, one of the ones that really you actually see during my playthrough is the Betrayer card. Now, the Betrayer card you see comes along, and this is going to be a Plains card. The Betrayer is only available if you're playing at the swamps, because that's the location for the the Artificer. So the Betrayer card, you got to go visit the Artificer. The Artificer is only in the Swamps expansion or the land type. So if you're not playing with the Swamps land type, what do you do with this card? Well, there's nothing in the rules here. Do you replay the card? Do you redraw the card? Do you discard the card? Do you ignore it? Because some of the cards will say that if this thing is going on, ignore this card and draw again. This one doesn't do it. So I don't know if it's a typo and you're actually supposed to go visit the smuggler or vendor. I would assume the vendor or something like that. Or not the vendor, but the smuggler, because you're killing people. That sounds like something the smuggler would do. But I don't know if it's a typo or if this card should have been one of the swamp cards or not. I'm not sure. It doesn't make sense there. Additionally, there's some other things about the cards that also really bothered me. And now this is something that can easily be fixed by somebody who's very enterprising and a board game geek. But all the symbols on the bottom of the cards weren't that 100% intuitive to me. Some of them I kind of looked at and I was like, okay, what exactly is that trying to tell me? And I think that could have been handled better. There would have been a handout or a little printout that can be given to all the players that gives an explanation of every single one of these symbols on the bottom of the cards. That would make it a lot better so you're not constantly pulling out the rule book and saying, okay, I found the belt of expansion. Okay, what does this do? I have no idea. Well, actually, that's an easy one. You can kind of figure out that's 2 extra slots. But what if you haven't played the game before? What if you don't know? You have to pull up the book every single time you want to look up these items. I would have appreciated if there would have been a double-sided card that had every one of these symbols and said, look, if this is a symbol you see, that's what it means. So, for example, this symbol means you have an extra item slot over here where you can put stuff. So if I have this, I have 2 more of those item slots. Of course, I've played the game enough times, I know this, but for new players, you're going to get very frustrated with that. So those are just a couple areas where I noticed that things could have been a little bit better. Additionally, I think older people, oh boy, I can't believe I'm saying that, I might be approaching there pretty soon, unfortunately. Well, maybe fortunately, because getting older is kind of a good thing. It's a lot better than the alternative. But some of the symbols on some of these tokens are a little bit on the smaller side. Now, I know it's not too terrible for me, but I do play with people whose vision is not the best. I know every single time they were doing this thing, they're going with their glasses and putting it back down. Look at the token, up with their glasses and putting the token back down. So I think they could have lit a little bit better, and a little bit extra pass on that would have been made a little bit more sense. So I'm not going to sit here and harp on the components. Truly, I think they could have just did a little bit better. Even with these, maybe putting a little sticker like this. I wouldn't have found this on Board Game Geek, and that was super duper awesome. Additionally, if you look at the rule book, and there's just one more thing I actually observed, which made me realize that maybe they didn't get to do everything they wanted. If you look at the rule book during setup, you see that the tray for everything looks like a one-piece tray. That's what the rule book shows. We got all these individual trays. So again, I really do feel, and I'm going to re-say this because I don't want people to think I'm being mean to the game. I really just feel that that's where the budget ended. And unfortunately, sometimes things like that happen because, we're not chasing the plastic train all the time. And we really, as gamers, need to stop chasing that plastic train. So let's go back to some good stuff. This game has a lot of fantastic replay variety, lots of replay value. You are going to get your dollar's worth out of this game. And this is, I'm going to be a little bit honest with you right here. A lot of times when I get board games, I'll play them once or twice and I'll put them away for a couple weeks or maybe a couple months because you can look behind me. I have hundreds and hundreds of games. This is one of those games that got its hooks into me amazingly well. I think I've played this game 5 times this week alone, which I never do. I played this game multiple times this week just to have fun. I played different classes, different races, different combinations, and every single time I played the game, it felt like a different adventure, a different quest, a different thing. I was playing differently. One time I went through and I played as an Elven Druid, and I had to avoid combat for like the first 15 or 16 days because I was not getting armor. So basically I had to rely on my elemental, hopefully encounter one monster only. If I encounter more of that, I had to get the heck out of Dodge. And then I played a half-orc conjurer, which was really fun, which I played with the sword. And I got really lucky with my hide checks a lot, which was really cool because I felt like I had this secondary blade going out there helping me fight, which was tons of fun. So The amazing amount of replay in this game is absolutely amazing. And it's going to be one of those games that you're not going to master quickly, which is also a great boon for me. I hate games where you play one time and you go, well, the basic strategy is you get this thing, get as much of this thing, and then you get all the victory points and hooray, you're the winner. Those games are not fun for me. This game doesn't do that. This game evolves every time you play. You need to read the board state, read your hero state, read how all the cards are going, and read just how your adventure is evolving, modify your tactics and strategies, and that's how you play the game better. Now, the game does play from 1 to 6 players, and I'm just going to say 1 to 6 because you're going to get the expansion. Trust me, you want the Desolation expansion. Having the 5 tile sets and everything it adds in is just absolutely phenomenal. You definitely want to have that. But this game plays up to 6 players, and don't let the naysayers shoot you down. This game plays fine at the higher player counts, especially if you appreciate simultaneous turns. Very easy to do simultaneous turns when you play a game like this because in the early stages of the game, most of the players are on opposite sides of the board because everybody wants to explore their own little sector. That's how you get the legend points. You don't get legend points from following other legends. You get the legend points by going out there and becoming your own legend. So in the early stages of the game, for the first 5, 6, 7 turns of the game, it's possible that you'd have 2, 3, or heck, every single player playing at the exact same time because they're in their own little sections of the board. And that's when you're playing cooperative. Of course, when you're playing the PvP, you may have to pay attention to the player turn just a little bit more, but as a cooperative game, it plays great at the higher player counts. Yes, your turns are going to take a little bit longer. Yes, the game's going to take a little bit longer, but it's not that terrible. It's great all the way from 1 to 6 players, and this is probably one of the better top 10 cooperative and solo games out there. This is one of those games that's quick to set up, quick to play, and actually pretty darn quick to put away, except for the insert. And I wanted to mention this under the components, but the insert, the main box insert, looks like they did a copy of the insert from the expansion because not all your tiles fit in there. So again, about those budgetary concerns, obviously has a little bit of a problem. So do I like this game? Heck yeah, I like this game. I enjoy it quite a bit. This is a game that I'm so happy is in my collection, and I cannot wait till the next expansion comes out. Now, my understanding is that's going to be the final expansion, which is the natives, and I believe it's going to add a way to hire the natives as NPCs. It's going to add, I think, 2 more tile types. I think that's going to be basic end of the production storyline, but it's not going to be the end of the storyline for Dragons Down. This is a great game. I highly, highly recommend it for solo players. I highly recommend it for group players. And I highly recommend it for people who enjoy cooperative games and also for player versus player style games. Hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you've enjoyed this video series. If you have any comments or questions, make sure to leave them down in the YouTube comments down below. I do my best to answer them as quickly as I can. Also, feel free to email me off the shelf board game reviews. That is ots@bgr@gmail.com. I do my best to answer those questions as quickly as we can. Again, this channel is 100% sponsor free. I'm not sponsored. I'm not paid. I do all this out of the goodness of my heart. The goodness of my heart. No, seriously, I do this because I enjoy the hobby so much. Nobody's paying me for this. I don't get these games free. I do this to help you save your dollars. So I need you to like, I need you to subscribe. I need you to leave the comments because that's what the YouTube algorithm likes. I don't need you to do it because I want that stuff to happen. I need the YouTube algorithms to help at least pay for my costs because everything you see comes out of my own pocketbook. You can help me cover those costs. As always, thanks for watching.